of heaven. In the years 1970 through 1973, Korea was facing great crisis. After this period passes, the state of global affairs will change, and as a result, North Korea's spiritual impetus for military action against South Korea will decline. Satan's global power will peak in 1977 and 1978. This is why I must now concentrate on our energies to build a line of global defense in America. I have mobilized 2 revival teams in America with 85 people each and bought each team a bus. With this, they will create a great sensation across the nation. I will buy 10 buses in 1973 and 50 buses in 1974 to mobilize 2,000 task force members. In this era, we need to build a line of global defense in America. By doing this through US senators and representatives, we will prevent the spread of communist influence in America. America itself does not recognize the need for this, so we need to do it. If America becomes one with us centering on the will, blocking communism worldwide will not be a problem. I mobilized young people in America and created a task force in 1972. These are individuals who are ready to sacrifice more than anyone else for this nation and for the world. They have stepped forward to inspire Americans with our God-centered teaching. America has no heavenly worldview about the individual, family, tribe, people, and nation. I plan to mobilize 400 people in 1973 and 2,000 people in 1974, so we can have at least 1 bus team in every state. I'm desperate to achieve this. I think it is the only way to prevent a crisis in the United States in 1977 and 1978. Cool. When I saw a bullet hole in the huge glass front door of the church headquarters in Essen, Germany, they told me it had been done by communists 2 weeks before. Communists everywhere are trying to threaten and intimidate us, coming up with all kinds of schemes. 1 week before Mother and I arrived, the German Supreme Court ruled that the Unification Church could carry out its activities legally. Prior to this, the communists ruthlessly slandered us. When we ignored them, they began threatening us, and later on, they even shot at our headquarters, randomly trying to kill anyone. Our members are literally asking their lives to fight for God's will. Such is the seriousness of the position we are in. We are risking our lives for this work. This is why leaders are busy all day. After leaving in the morning, members and leaders should not return unless they have accomplished their portion of responsibility. We are carrying out our work with strict discipline.
Thank you, Colm, for reading, and also Colm for providing that. Next, let's welcome up Colm for the service we're going to do today. So let's give a round of applause.
Thank you, everybody, for coming this morning, this beautiful day in the summer. We've been very lucky with the weather the last 2 weeks. As I barrel down the M3 with the white knuckle ride to try and get here in time, the Sunday ritual, unfortunately, it's culturally acceptable in Ireland to be 5 or 10 minutes late, but seeing as we're an international community, let me apologize to everybody else who's not Irish. I say it's culturally acceptable, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just west of Ireland. It is, yeah. Okay, thanks, James. Thanks for that. I don't know what Heavenly Parent thinks about that culture, but anyway, I met Matthias yesterday up in Belfast, and he said, "Don't worry." He said, "I grew up in Africa." He said, "So there's another level of time there." So anyway, you might wonder why I chose that. People probably get really bored with the whole communism thing and obsessed, unificationists with it. Maybe some of us, me. But and my title today is My Proudest Day, which I'll go into a little bit later on. But the reason I chose it is there's a bit of recency bias going on, because every day I listen to the Gaudible, and at the moment the Gaudible is highlighting these passages from True Father when he came to America first in the 70s. And it's interesting because I don't know, is the word contemporaneous notes taken at the time? Is that the right word? But these are notes, or these are speeches given at the time, and haven't really been edited for posterity. So you're kind of thinking, wow, this is actually what he's thinking at the time. And then we've got the benefit of hindsight to look back at what happened. How did these campaigns pan out? You know, because we make goals and we, you know, maybe we get some time to look back on them afterwards in our own lives of faith. And then we see, did we achieve them or not? But here's true Father, Reverend Moon, Messiah, coming to America. And it goes into how he had to get his green card, I think in 1973, and True Mother had to get her residency status green card as well. And all these things, he's putting them down as big conditions that were fulfilled, yeah? At the moment, when we look back on the achievements of true parents, we often think, well, it's hard to comprehend because it's basically more than 30 years, 35 years in America, and then there's the time in Korea, and of course they were backing over, and these particular Chambu Gyeong speeches at the moment for the last couple of weeks have been going into the history. So I guess for a lot of people that's very boring, but for me it's quite interesting, because the longer you are in the movement, the more you like to get a bit more perspective, I think, for me anyway. So the challenges that True Father faced going to America as a Korean and trying to mobilize Christianity, basically. You know, he was coming and he was celebrating 200 years of the birth of the Republic in 1976. So for the older, some of the older generation, maybe this is all old news, but I think for our young people, it's good to, and myself, like I consider myself 1.5 generation still, although that's increasingly untenable as I hit 50, you know, just getting lumped in as an oldie with the rest of our first generation. But somehow that is also quite a proud status to have, you know. So, but often, you know, I think the second and now the third gen can find this very boring, like they've heard all this before, maybe, and maybe they think it's not relevant. But when I look at society today, you know, the challenges that America had in the 70s, I compare them morally to the challenges that Ireland has today, right? And the world is a smaller place because of the internet, because of social media. So what's happening in America yesterday is news today in Ireland, depending on who you're following, you know? So the challenges at the time were maybe communism was there. You can say communism isn't here anymore, or is it? Has it just morphed into something new? Has True Father not won the victory? So these are all questions that you can ask, and you can say, well, China is still promoting communism, and even Xi Jinping, is that his name? Xi, he's, you know, in 2012, as recently as 2012, he launched a new campaign of Marxism, Leninism, Chinese style. Not very widely reported in the West, of course, particularly because it's not in the interests of those who promote that worldview that it be widely reported. And if you want to take over the world with your ideology, you may not want to tell your enemies straight away. But in any case, he's quite open about it. And what are we doing? What's our response? Yeah, our response is the same as it ever was. Same as when True Father came in the 70s, trying to two things, restore. He said he had two missions. He had to revive and restore Christianity and basically destroy communism. That might sound harsh, you know, like destroying something. But if something, you know, as Causa taught, it's God or no God. That's the end of the day, the message of what to believe. Do you believe in communism or not? No, that's a very simplistic thing, and people struggle in their lives of faith. I'm not trying to say that if you don't believe in God, you're not a good person. Of course not. There's a whole gray area and a spectrum in between that. People of good conscience, people who stand up for freedom. That's another thing, that communism and versus democracy. Democracy, you know, in the real sort of basic sense is about communism is about equality, actually, which is a challenge for the conservatives, would say. And democracy is about freedom. Yeah, none of those things sound particularly bad. Yeah, why not be? Why shouldn't we have equality? And why shouldn't we have freedom? But at its kind of core, that's what those two ideologies stand for. And in terms of headwing then, which is what unificationism is, trying to investigate and find a way to, to implement some sort of unity between those two is ideal. There should be equality, but there should be freedom. But of course, with freedom comes responsibility. So True Father in the 70s was complaining about, the young people, and he was pointing to our, this generation, first generation, and saying, look at these people. They're going around and they're basically giving up their lives for God. Contrast that with the hippies, as he calls them. I have to laugh at some of the language he uses. He said, Americans will welcome these young people into their houses, when they consider that their own children are hippies who are off engaged in free sex. Some of the blunt language they use, I know it's translated. It's quite funny, and maybe a couple of years ago we wouldn't have found it so funny. You can see why we get attacked in the media, for these sort of simplistic. Today, would that that were the only challenge? Free sex and hippies. Today we have a whole other gambit of problems that how would you call it? The false truth, the false world is preaching to our children, the false culture, not just free sex, but we have challenges of, relationships, gay marriage, and people who not sure what gender they are, And this is encouraged by the left, encouraged by the media. So we can be very proud of our true parents, of our foundation that we have. Of course, it pains me that we don't have a bigger foundation. And, everything we do, all our activities within our movement are aimed at different sectors of society and different people to try to encourage them to be part of this restoration of true values, centering on the Messiah, centering on true parents. So I just want, can you roll it on actually to slide 8? I don't know, I've got mine on PowerPoint, but I'm not sure if yours is going to present very well. My proudest day, my proudest moment, obviously was the blessing of my daughter, my eldest, Tara, who can't be with us today, unfortunately. She wanted to come, but I asked her to stay at home and mind the house. But she's joining us online. And I actually would have loved if we could have had testimony from some of those who got blessed. We had 3 couples from Ireland this time. I know recently we had other couples as well. I'd just like to acknowledge and congratulate everybody who got blessed recently, because it is a fantastic achievement. And I think for a parent, it's an incredibly proud moment. I mean, I'm celebrating, Danny and I were celebrating our 25th blessing anniversary next week. And I was up to the lead up, in the lead up to that. You can move it on to the next one there. Oh, sorry, actually, there's a little video I wanted to show. I don't know if we've seen this already. The previous slide, if you're able to show that, I'm not sure. We could show it after or show it now. If it's not hyperlinked, you might want to prepare that maybe while Song, if you're able to. Anyway, if you can move it on to, copy that maybe, and we'll try and play it in a minute, but if you can move it on to the next slide. Yeah, so I wasn't at my greatest day, my most memorable day. I wasn't at the event, but I didn't mind. Because, when we got blessed in Bratislava 25 years ago, it wasn't like the event very special. It didn't have all the bells and whistles and all the trimmings and and it's not even because it was with a load of other people. It was just because it's so rushed, and we didn't have Zoom and the internet. We had a satellite blessing, but no one ever really, it's not that easy to get onto a satellite blessing to watch it like it is. You have to set up back then you had to set up a satellite venue to watch satellite blessing from. It was actually from New York. I think it was from Madison Square Garden. So the blessing that we attended was in Bratislava, And we were together for a couple of days. It was 1998. The World Cup was on actually in France. France won that, and was watching that while also preparing for. Eli's laughing at me here. How could I focus on something so mundane when I'm? Well, that's it. Yeah. That's it. I'm making a condition like True Father. You know the way True Father makes conditions and fishes and watches football. That's a condition. Or maybe penance, James, like when you had to go to the Bows matches years ago, huh? If you didn't behave yourself. Anyway, it's not always fun watching matches, I can assure you. Think of last night, for example. But I had the pleasure of spending a week with my darling wife 25 years ago before we got blessed, just in the run-up. And that was not the first time we met. We'd met a year before. Actually, had we? No, actually, that was pretty much the first time we met in '98. And we had a couple of phone calls, that was it. But I was very relieved that she was, in my opinion, a beautiful sister. And at least she, because at that time you were getting blessed to somebody who you didn't know. It could be anybody. It was the look of the draw. Of course, you put your faith in True Father, Reverend Moon, and his matching. But I think today there's a bit more, shall we say, intervention or hands-on from the participants and those involved, which is only right. It's only right because you don't have the benefit of True Fathers. Look at so many wonderful matches that he did, like miraculous insight that he had into choosing a spouse or a partner. Look around our own community. Also the first generation. We had that benefit. So that was the proudest day of my life. And I didn't expect it to come. I was more focused really on my own 25th wedding anniversary. But the fact that Tara was getting blessed, and then it happened, it was kind of all very surreal. Yeah, it's like an unexpected blessing or good fortune or grace. And I hope she also, obviously she, when you're getting married and you like the person, and obviously you're going to enjoy the day, yeah. But over time, a relationship, they're all, they pretty much follow a similar pattern. Yeah, of course you can work on your marriage but you do have to work on it. It's not instantaneous. So over the last 25 years, I'm very grateful today that, we built something special. And now the proudest day of my life as a father is to watch my daughter, not to bring her down the aisle, which I would have liked to have done. Maybe I can do that in the future in a civil ceremony, but for her to be happy and to the culmination of our faith in a way, the only real sacrament that we have, probably have one or two other ones, forgiveness ceremonies or whatever, but actual proper sacraments, I think, is the blessing, because it's not just the blessing, it's not just the marriage, it's also forgiveness in the case of the first generation of original sin. But of course, in the case of the second generation, it's a fulfillment of their faith, but it's only the start. And this is, I guess, one of my central points today. I watched the testimonies last week on European News from the national leader of Sweden, whose name escapes me, Peter, and I think he got blessed recently as well. Matched. Sorry?
Actually, sorry, he got matched.
His brother got blessed. And I think it was him that said, his parents then said, no, your life really begins, like your life of faith, your public life really begins. It doesn't end, in other words, when you get blessed. It's only beginning if you haven't already been investing in a public life. Now, to a degree, we all live in public lives all the time. Otherwise, you wouldn't have ended up with the blessing. You would have been probably captured by society and gone a different direction. And that's the problem, in terms of supporting each other, even within our own families. We have to always look out for our brothers and sisters, be our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. But that's about our community and about how we support each other and about building our community. And I guess that's the sad part, that, with all the precious jewels that we haven't been able to do more. But, I'm not I'm as much to blame as anyone else. How have we done every day to witness? There's days I wake up and I'm not inspired, and I wouldn't be witnessing to anybody. I wouldn't want to hear or see a divine principle lecture or lecturer, or be able to give this precious truth to somebody because maybe I'm just having a bad day and I don't feel it's a precious truth on that day. And that's my reality. And I'm not saying that's wrong or it's a sin, but that's our reality. That's my fallen condition. Second gen, yeah, you have a different experience, I'm sure, growing up, but I'm sure you'll have days as well where you just couldn't be bothered, yeah, because you're struggling with something. So the challenge for us is to live every day inspired, and that's not easy. And some of us are asked to sacrifice a lot. And those of us that have blessings, to talk about myself, I'm very grateful for those blessings. And I try and remember that when I'm struggling, or when I'm being asked to do things that I don't like to do. And I think you can, I don't know if you found that video, but maybe you can roll it on in the meantime. Yeah, I wanted to just say about this thing about public life. We had a really wonderful couple here for the last, was it two or 3 years they were here? Yeah, and I'd just like to acknowledge their contribution to the centre, I think, and to the mission that they had as effectively youth pastors, as well as Dublin community or Dublin city leaders. I think for young people, they left a massive impression on this country, and I think we should be very grateful to them, and it's sad to see them go. And I hope we can find a suitable, capable couple that can replace them in that position, because I think it helps to have that support for the second gen and for the young people. And there's an example of a couple who are trying to balance everything: a job, family life, a mission. So, and sorry, G7, did you manage to? I think we lost a couple more slides, not too many. Oh, the video, right, okay. So just while that's loading, then I just wanted to say as well, I was inspired. Another thing that inspired me recently was a service that Aryan Rai gave, if you know who he is. I think it was in Lancaster Gate, and he was talking about grace, actually. And then last week I was looking at the North London service, and I saw David Rennie, if you know who he is. He's a musician, I think, amongst other things. He was talking about Aryan Rai's service about grace, and is it cheap grace? He was talking about cheap grace, like you get grace, which is everyone gets grace from God, yeah. It's a bit like forgiveness or blessing or God's grace, yeah. We all get it, but how do we purchase it? Did we purchase it cheaply, or did we pay a lot for it? It was a wonderful idea, a wonderful concept. I advise anyone to go and have a look at that service. But David Rennie is the first gen who I got the impression, he didn't always want to go to service, but, like many of our first gen. And then he's watching this. He manages to he went to Lancaster Gate instead of going to his local service in North London, which meant his wife was given out to him because he had a 5-hour round trip when he could have gone to North London, which is only, I believe, much closer. To hear Aryan Rai give a service about grace, and he said it knocked him off his seat. He was so shocked by the content of it. It woke him up so much, this second gen talking about the concept of cheap grace and expensive grace. And we think, do we deserve grace? Of course we do. We're children of God. We all get grace from God, yeah? But this concept of, did you pay anything for your grace? Maybe you might feel bad if you didn't, like you're getting all this grace and basically you got it for nothing, you got it for free. So this was the content of the service, but such insight, wonderful, beautiful insight from this brother. I don't know if you know him, Aryan, yeah. And I hadn't heard him, I don't think I'd heard him speak before. I know his dad pretty well. And he's quite a good, talker as well. So it was nice to see a first gen, just an example of because the reason I mentioned David is because I felt the same way as David did when I watched it. I was like, geez, this is really good, yeah. For a YouTube service, watch back, you know. And it just shows you where some second gen, you know, where you guys are at. And I was very impressed because that kind of service actually could have been from a first gen, really. And I'm not saying that you guys don't do good services, you do, but sometimes I get the impression there's a generation gap between us where you feel these guys are going on about this communism again, or they're going on about this, that, and the other again. You know, what relevance is that to me? This is boring, you know. I mean, whereas he's obviously, you know, managed to pick that sweet point where everyone can relate to him, not just members, actually, not just first and second gen, but maybe Christians and everybody. And you all tend, as David Rennie said, when you're listening to the sermon giver, it doesn't matter what the sermon giver is saying. It's what you hear. Did you come to hear something from God? Did you come and, because that's why we go to service, you know, to get inspired, not because Eli's a good speaker or James or Howard or myself or, you know, Brandon. It's because God wants to talk to us. So it's what we hear. It's not what the speaker says, it's what we hear. Do you want to just maybe run that? I don't think it's too long. You've probably seen this, have you? Did you show that, Eli? Last time? No.
사랑의 당신을 당신을 정하는 사랑이 한번 가겠습니다. 사랑의 축복하정
Okay, so let's offer a round of applause. Join me. We'll roll it on there, Jason. Next slide. Yeah, you finished. I'm just going to offer a prayer in a minute, but I just want to conclude. I know we have a meeting coming up after. You can go to the next one, right? And there's 3 couples from Ireland. And lastly, that's myself 25 years ago, actually 24 years ago. The blessing photograph is even more degraded looking, unfortunately, which is what I was referring to. Maybe you can go back to the previous one. Yeah, so I just want to conclude by saying that I'm very happy and very proud. And I don't mean proud, like proud isn't as a negative connotation, but grateful to God for this wonderful blessing. And this is for me a wonderful, I hope Danny the same, blessing 25th anniversary present from God that my daughter Proudest can get blessed to such a wonderful young man, Michael. And this, just in case you're watching or watching back, this is your, how would you say, this is my revenge on you because you were supposed to be here today giving them service. So anyway, I'm very mean. I'm sorry, forgive me. I asked them to give it, but anyway. But I'm sure Tara and Michael, I asked him. Yeah, anyway, it's fine. It's fine. Michael actually physically couldn't be here, but he was willing to do a Zoom. Whereas Tara was too shy. That's her. That's the official explanation anyway. She's shy when she wants to be. But anyway, thank you all for listening. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you could get something out of this. I'll just say close with a prayer. Honourable Heavenly Parents, thank you for this beautiful summer which we're having, and we could have couples from Ireland attending blessing in Germany and Albania, and true mothers officiating in Korea, as we ourselves, all of us, many of us watching, have been able to attend blessing and receive your special grace in all senses of the word, and help us to really try to live a public life and a public mission, even if we day to day are involved in family or other work, other careers. We still artistically want to be able to save the nation and save people, Heavenly Parent, our families, our neighbors, find a way to reach out to them, to tell them about the great new truth that our true parents are on the earth, our true mothers on the earth, and that there is eternal life and salvation through the blessing. Help us to really find ways to convey that message. It's a simple message. We have many organizations within the unification movement that are trying to do this in different ways, externally, internally, long process, short process. But the most important thing, Heavenly Parent, is our hearts. Help us to have the heart to be grateful and to want to share our good fortune and our true love and our blessing with everybody that we can. And we're sorry, I'm sorry, Heavenly Parent, if I let you down. And please be with us, with our true mother, give her a long life. and happiness, and be with our community here in Ireland so that we have brothers and sisters throughout the nation that can support each other. New people can come, so that our second and our third generation will not be growing up without Sunday services in their area or without Sunday school in their area, that they can connect with the community nearby, that they can feel that they always have friends to support them, because without each other, Heavenly Parent, we cannot survive in the same way. We cannot live a fulfilling life unless we have support from each other, and help us to really overcome our own selfish natures to have the desire to reach out. Heavenly Parents, please accept my prayer on behalf of our community here in this service, and I want to pray and report this in my name, Colm of the County Blessed Family, Blessed Central Family, Church Doctrine, Chicago, Arjun.
Thank you, Colm, for that service today. Yeah, for literally being the channel for God's words today. As Colm said, it's not what the speaker says specifically, but what you hear. So I hope we could all pick up something that really stood out to us. Personally, I found the sharing of a parent's heart and the pride and the love of their oldest child going to a blessing very, very touching. I personally didn't see those videos before. I saw a lot of photos, but not the videos, which displayed a lot more energy or character from each of the couples. Yeah, I think a lot of things in life, whether it be literally our life course or different projects, they can span over such a great period of time that we don't see when we have been fortunate or receive God's grace, or even the challenges that we have overcome. So I think that kind of self-reflection was, yeah, personally for me, a good reminder to try and recognize everything that has happened, everything that we received, everything we're lucky for. Yeah, and personally, I feel fortunate for many things, and that can be something that I can show appreciation for by paying more for my grace, maybe. Thinking how much can I give back more in public life, even in small ways. And I think just small little reminders like that for me at least can help. Yeah, just appreciate the grace that I do receive. But yeah, thank you very much, Colm, for sharing that today. We will move on to our closing song. I think it should be He Has Called Me. Yeah.
Sorrow as in joy.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a few announcements which Eli will share.
And I also wanted to thank Colm for the service. I know he's worried about if other people are worried about communism and stuff, but I am. I'm also very interested in church history. So yeah, it was very interesting, the reading about Father thinking of the future, but from 1972, right? And obviously, like it was very ambitious and it was very difficult to achieve, and those goals are still there, right? Trying to uplift Christianity, unite Christianity, overcome communism. I would argue that maybe the reason the US is the way it is because those goals weren't achieved, right? Communism wasn't really completely overcome. Christianity wasn't really fully revived, right? And you kind of see the cultural trend that happens. So I have to run off a little early today, but we definitely need to kind of catch up on quite a few things. So we're going to try to have 2 shorter membership meetings kind of right after the service. So we'll take like a 5-minute break. So people need to use the toilet or anything. We'll meet back here right away for those that want to be part of the membership meeting. We have kind of a few things we'll try to talk about quickly, a few updates, and then next week we'll try to again have kind of maybe dive into some of the discussions a bit more. For one thing I didn't write in the email, but it's kind of been coming up. I keep forgetting to announce it, but we're out of parking tickets halfway through the year. I kind of know why that happened. It's kind of tied in with kind of all the stuff that's been going on. So